Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I'm here with Philip LoPresti. Is it LoPresti or LoPresti?
LoPresti.
LoPresti. Okay. And he is, I had to write this stuff down, man. You've done a lot. Is the author of The Things We Bury, Where It Hurts and For How Long, Tried and Ruined, and nice enough to send me a copy of this one, Those Born in Darkness Never Seek the Light. Congrats on getting this out, man. This is quite an achievement.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
sad to say, I'm only about halfway through, so can't speak so much about that. But yeah,
No worries.
let's just dive in. I'll partake of some coffee here too.
Huh. Gotta have the coffee.
A little earlier here in California.
Yeah, what time is it there? 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or 10. So I guess well, let's just go with that. So how has living in New York kind of informed your writing, do you think?
That's a good question. It's actually weird because I'm originally from Brooklyn, but I moved upstate with my family when I was a kid. So, but I live in a very rural area, so my writing is actually more akin to like something you'd find in like Southern Gothic fiction or Southern crime fiction, as opposed to more city-based noir or that kind of crime fiction. So I've always felt drawn to Southern fiction for that reason, but that's just because the place I live in is just very rural. And when I discovered Southern writers early on, there was like a connection there because of that. I'm also a photographer, so, and I take a lot of pictures, and I would get comments from people like, just even on social media, like, "Oh, I thought you lived in New York." And it's like, well, I do. I live in New York is a big place.
I
Everyone
live in
thinks
New
like,
York
oh,
State, not New York City. Yeah. I don't know
yeah,
why.
everyone
I don't know
thinks,
why people all over the country have this thing where it's like you hear New York and you just think of Manhattan. I don't know why
yeah,
that is. I don't
that's
know if it's just pop culture and everybody just immediately thinks Statue of Liberty, they think Brooklyn, they think the five boroughs, but it's just
and it happens all. Yeah, if you're not from New York, it's more often that people just think, oh, they think Manhattan, like you were saying. But New York is such a big place.
oh, I mean, even if you say Buffalo, people are always like, that's great. So did you ever make it to New York City?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I
And
remember,
like,
God, going back like more than 20 years, God, more than 20 years ago now, when I went to Woodstock 99, which was in Rome, New York, which is the center of the state. I would tell people like, oh yeah, it's in New York and a couple buddies, and we're gonna drive out there. And they're like, how far away from New York City is that? I'm like, a long fucking way.
yeah, exactly.
People just can't, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's just, well, because New York City is it's New York City.
It's
It's so
iconic. Yeah.
infamous. So I mean, and where I live, where I am now, it's like you could drive 10 minutes down the road, and then all of a sudden it's more suburbs. But then 15 minutes beyond that, it's urban.
Right.
So it's like the landscape changes drastically in like a short amount of time too. So
Oh, and even like going back to our parents and grandparents' generations, just with the internet, especially, just it's a smaller world. Everything's just kind of encroached on each other, and it's really been kind of hard for me to kind of see some of those. I mean, there's jokes about boomers and stuff, but going back to like people still around from like the World War II generation. It's like this is not the world they grew up in at all. They
yeah,
have like no frame of reference to them. It's just like that's why so many of them are shut-ins, and they hold on to their secrets. Probably a plot device maybe from one of your stories, but older people hold on to their secrets because everything that we do, it's like, look at the salad I had it's on Instagram.
right.
Look at
Yeah.
this cats juggling. It's like we just every 5 to minutes or 2 hours. I mean, I'm doing stuff less and less online, but yeah, it's just a different world. But so let me give you a little bit of praise here, and then also kind of work that into a question, which
Mhm.
the few chapters I have read of the book, what I was really impressed with is the connectivity, but also kind of how each chapter could basically almost work as a short story, kind of how, there's information taken from the previous chapter and then, led into the next, but they're almost self-contained in a way I thought it was really impressive. And so I'm not so familiar with the earlier work. I know you've written some poetry, but have you written short stories or put out a collection of short stories?
Actually, no, I don't write short stories. I have attempted numerous times throughout, the years, just even from as a kid. And I don't honestly think I've ever finished one. Um, because when I start one, by the time I either get halfway through or where I think the ending is going to happen, I just have so much more I want to say. So I'm not, yeah, I don't really, I've attempted, like I said, numerous times. I just never
Well, one
finished
thing I
one.
run into, and maybe you've run into this too, because I've written some short stories, and this is advice I've gotten from writers that are older than me too, and they were like, whatever you do when you're writing a short story, don't make your secondary character so interesting, because then you're fucked. Because you get
Yeah,
3/4 or 2/3 or whatever the way through it, and all of a sudden you're just daydreaming and you're going like, yeah, but even after he killed that guy and he's not even the main character, like, where did he go? What did he do? Did he go somewhere else? Did he go to another town? Like, was there another job? And all of a sudden you're like, you're not so worried about this assassination or hit that happened behind a grocery store. You want to know where the hitman went,
exactly.
and it
Yeah.
just
It's a
spools.
good advice. Because the two books prior to the new one that just came out were novellas. And I actually I mean, Those Born in Darkness is definitely like on the shorter side of a novel. Um, but it actually started off as a novella. And then it just kept rolling. Like all the
Yeah.
ideas just kept rolling and all these characters just kept coming in. So it wound up being a novel. It actually wasn't started as one though. Because I prefer novellas. I like shorter reads. I like slimmer slimmer books.
I
For
think
for for
my
numerous
mother
reasons,
would
but
call those, when she was alive, she would call them what did she call the books under 400 pages? She would call, or 300 pages. She would call them summer beach reads,
summer, yep.
where it's like you can take it's a hot week or something in the summertime, and you get off work on a Friday, go to a lake or the ocean or whatever, and
Mhm.
then by the next weekend you're pretty much done with the book. So
Yeah, yeah. Like all those old like even all those old pulp like crime dime store novels from like the 40s and 50s. They were really short and that would be like a summer beach read.
well, it's
um
funny too, because if you think back to a lot of these previous writers where you're like, holy shit, how did these people have like this back catalog of stuff that was like 50, 60 books, and you go, good God. But then it's like you actually go to a library or a bookstore and you pull out some of these and you're like, these are like less than 150 pages.
yeah, they're very slim. I prefer stuff like that. I mean, I enjoy longer novels too. It's just uh especially when with the internet, like you, it's so easy to discover so many more things that you're just interested in, and not just books, but movies and whatnot. It's like there's so much stuff to consume nowadays, and so easy. It's such easy access to it. It's like I don't have time to. I'd rather give my attention. I could read, 4 books in a month rather than like one book.
Well,
Like
and
some of my.
and there's just so many distractions, to piggyback on what you were saying there too. And I find that um, the people that recommend longer, like tomes that are like 1,000 pages or whatever, I notice that either A, they don't have kids,
Mhm.
B, maybe they work from home and so they can just, have their downtime and then just go to a shelf and sit down. And a lot of them were talking to me about books they read like 5, 10 years ago when either they didn't have kids or they weren't working so much. And I think that the culture shifts, like we were talking about, like
Mhm.
there's just so much, we're inundated with everything, even just
Yeah,
walking down the
it's
street, you're looking at billboards or, walking out, looking out for other people that are doing this while they're walking down the street.
yeah.
So, another thing I wanted to ask you, writer to writer, because this was something that kind of stood out to me in your book, is I really love the character names. And it's really cool when you recognize that because there's so many, I find, vanilla names in fiction where you're just like John Smith and whatever, Mary Ellsworth, or just
Yeah.
your pick of the litter. You read it and turn the next page and you've already forgotten about them. But one that stood out to me, and I don't want to give away plot points here from the new book, but Bodine Carlson. Where did that name come from?
I honestly, I have no,
I mean,
I have no,
Bodine. I mean, that's it's like I thought, well, I've never heard that, but it's like, yeah, I think in my life, maybe when I lived in the South for like a year, I think maybe I heard that name, but it's not a common name.
I, yeah, honestly, I don't remember where that name came from. It might have been a name, Bodine might have been something I heard just maybe from a movie and it just stuck in my head, but I can't really, yeah, I can't pinpoint exactly where it came from. But I'm glad that you brought that up because I'm the same. I hate when I read even books that I love where the names are just like you said, so vanilla. I'm like, couldn't you come up with something better than that? So I actually work kind of hard on coming up with character names that sort of fit or a little bit different. In Where It Hurts and For How Long, the main character, his name is Gideon,
That's a
which
cool
is
name.
not a name that you hear often. The Things We Bury, there's a character, his name is Fenton, which is a very Irish name, but yeah, it's not. I'm drawn to names that you don't hear very often. So
Well, and that kind of begs the question. So, do you keep a little notepad with you, or just your phone, and you're out at a restaurant or a cafe, or you're waiting in like an ungodly line at the DMV or something, and all of a sudden you just hear something, and you're just like, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Let me write that down." Does that ever
that's
happen?
exactly, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I usually type. I used to carry a notebook more, but it's easier to do it on the phone now. But yeah, I'm constantly. People think like, even my girlfriend India, who obviously, she's like, you're always on your phone, like, but it's like I'm not.
And you're like, "Well, I'm not. I'm
I'm not texting or I'm not like on
I'm not
social media a
ignoring
lot of the
you.
time.
I'm trying to get
I'm
this
actually like
down."
a lot of the like I would say about 70% of the time I'm like actually writing notes and things that pop into my head or like you said, sometimes I'll be out and I hear something like even a name. It's like, oh, that's a strange kind of you.
Well, that begs the question to add on to that, because I think she and I talked about this too, where it's like if you are in that situation and you've got the notebook, or you're out somewhere, maybe even writing in public, or that ungodly line for something you just have to do and you're working on it. Have you ever been in a like a public conversation with somebody in person, whether you're out to eat or you're talking to somebody, and all of a sudden the little lightning zygote idea lands in your head, and all of a
Oh
sudden
yeah.
you just get diarrhea of the mouth, and you're just and then the person's like, "Are you okay?"
Oh, it happens to me all the time. I often get I'll get like my boss will say stuff to me because we'll be in the middle, like I'll be at work and like all of a sudden some like you said, like light bulb goes off and I pull out my phone and it's like, like my boss like, okay, get off the phone. We got to, we have stuff to do. And it's like, one more minute, one more minute.
And they're like, "I don't speak that. What is that?" You're
Yeah.
like, it's and you're doing the
Before,
timeout thing, and like, "Are we in the middle of a game?"
yeah, exactly. It's like, I just want to tell them to shut up before, because, ideas come and if I don't get it down, it could just, ideas go as easily as they come. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
like if you
yeah.
don't,
Oh my
if
God, man. Like sometimes if you think in the back of your mind like oh, I'm just driving, I'm 5 minutes from the mall, I'm sure when I park and I can safely do whatever I need to do, and then you get there and the next thing you know you're walking and you're walking around and you're like, wait, what? I fuck.
yeah,
You just, and it's
it's
gone, and it's
yeah, it's
never
happened.
quite like the intensity and the clarity of it where it's just
Hmm.
a thunderclap into your head,
Yeah,
because we all can't just be filmed, we all can't just have like an assistant walking behind us just being like, is he gonna have a brain fart, like hold
yeah,
on, you know,
yeah.
you can't get them
No,
all.
yeah, that's happened to me before, and it actually can kind of like I get it's sort of yeah. I've had it happen, and I've actually gotten like a little bit depressed about it because it's like I have something in my head that I think, oh, this would be great, or just even a line or something like that, or a piece of dialogue, and then I'll lose it, and it can be like I'm writing and someone says something to me, and then all of a sudden it just sort of breaks the
You
concentration, and then I
ass.
lose it. Yeah,
And
I'm
you're
like,
not mad at them, but you're just like because they don't get
no,
it.
of
Like,
course not.
um,
Yeah, it's hard to explain to people that don't write or aren't
exactly. That's what I was
creative.
gonna say.
It's
There, I mean, I wouldn't say that non-creative people. There's people that are, thought process is different or manage their insanity a little differently. But
yeah.
it's tough when it's like somebody's coming up to you and they're talking about like, oh, and I had to with the rain I had to shore up the flower pots, and then you're like, yeah, 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 but let me tell you about this idea, and they're like, yeah, and and I had to get the fertilizer and they said it was on sale at Home Depot, and you're like, I just what? And you're like, what they're saying is practical and it makes sense and it's everyday
Yeah.
life and it's their backyard and yada yada yada. It's a conversation you've had 50 times, but it's tough too because in the back of your mind sometimes you're thinking like, I need something for this character to do to make it look like he's doing something normal when he's hiding something, like he pretending to have a normal life and do everything, and it's like, where's that boring guy at the store that always talks to me about his gardening, where is he today? Of all
Right.
days.
That's funny.
Oh, well, okay, so let me ask you this, with the predominant kind of crime, kind of noir setting and vibe for a lot of your writing. Um, and I find this too. What do you think the allure is for broken characters? There's such a fixture of that genre.
I think I think crime stories, I think the characters in crime stories are the most realistic in fiction in general because there is there is no like you have like a genre like fantasy, which is not my genre. It obviously has its place, but it's like you have good and evil. Everything's black and white. And for me, the allure is just like life's not black and white. It's just one big gray area. And there is no one person that's just completely good, and there is no one person that's, completely bad or evil. Um, so it's like everybody, I think everybody's broken in their own way.
Mhm.
Um, so I think crime fiction for me, what the attraction is it definitely resembles life more realistically in that sense.
I think that there's like I said, I don't want to give plot points away from the book of what I've read so far, but there was a really kind of, I would say dour, but it's also really powerful section where I think it's the character of Finch who I want to say sneaks into, and correct me if I'm wrong here because it's been a couple of days since I read it. I think the ex-girlfriend's house, and they have a
Is
conversation, and she's in bed, and she says something like, "Are you gonna stay?" And he just turns around and leaves, and she watches him go.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, so that's so true to life because so many times, especially when it comes to relationships, it's we're not all knowing and all powerful and witty gods and goddesses that we say the right thing at the right time always. Sometimes we're just befuddled. Sometimes we're kind of powerless. Sometimes it's just things happen to us, and sometimes
Mhm.
we let them happen. We don't necessarily want to. We feel shitty when they're happening to us, but sometimes just, maybe this female character was just, asleep and she didn't, was it a dream or is she half awake? And it sounds like, she's been through this movie before with this guy. And with the guy also, it's kind of like sometimes there's nothing to say.
And that's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. Especially in those kinds of situations, like you said, not to give away anything about the plot, but it's like you have this situation between these two characters, and there's a child involved in that situation, and it's like you said, sometimes it's too heavy, and sometimes you just have to walk away, and there isn't anything to say,
I know,
um
and I also think it's
not
good.
anything that'll fix the situation.
Right, and the way that you phrased it too, I think is kind of poignant because um, I'm a big fan of less is more, and also to add in the mystery of an ongoing longer story. It's kind of like, well, why can't they say anything? Why would she not chase after him, at least verbally, or him to turn around before going out the door and give a parting shot of, see you around, kid, or like adios, or next week or something.
Yeah,
It just what am I trying to say? Not to be like a cliche, but sometimes it just hangs there,
yeah,
like a dangling kind of conversation. It just hangs there, and sometimes that's just so much more powerful than just exposition, bickering, chit chat. They don't have to be Bogey and Bacall and bicker cute
hmm
at each other for 45 minutes.
yeah. And I'm more of a fan of that kind of storytelling. I like things that don't necessarily have, you know, where everything's wrapped up, even in the moment, even those little moments in a book where, like you're saying, like a conversation, like it's left hanging. I like storytelling like that, because
Well,
not
also it
everything
leaves
is.
something to be possibly resolved later, because it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
if it was a short story, it's like, yeah, you have to kind of get it all in, and then it's like he left knowing he would never see her again. The end.
Yeah, yeah.
But since it's a novel, it's like, well, this is going to
Well,
probably
yeah,
take
you gotta with a novel, definitely you gotta create this sort of suspense throughout.
and
You
leave
don't
them
want to
wanting
like
more too. More importantly.
you
So
don't
let
want
me
to.
ask you this, so I can kind of sense that you've kind of been inspired and influenced by this. But are you a big fan of film noir and neo noir and things like that?
Yes, I am. Absolutely. It's one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite. It's probably, well, horror and crime noir are definitely my favorite genres. But yeah, I'm attracted to writing crime more than people always tell me, because I'm a huge horror fan as well. Like, but I've always been more of a fan of horror films. I'm not that big a fan of horror fiction, believe it
Mhm.
or not. Um, People are always like, "Oh, you got to write a horror novel. You got to write a horror novel. You're such a
Yeah,
big,
but with
horror film."
horror movies, though, it's about, I think anyway, it's more about the ride.
It is.
It's
It
the
is.
90-minute to 2 hour ride, whereas
Yeah.
the horror novel, it's like there's a lot. And unfortunately, Stephen King has been doing this a lot in the last 20 years, where there's 100 pages spent on a character who's not going to have anything to do with the payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And an example of that I would probably give is the Outsider. Great miniseries, right? The first like 50 to 60 pages, it was like, holy shit, this thing happened. What a great way to start, with the guy getting arrested at the Little League game, and he was supposed to be in two places at the same time. And how the hell did this happen? And then there's like the detectives talking about like how it affects, like, their lives and the small town, and like the kids and the parents of the kids on the team, and it's like that's great and all, but that shouldn't last like 400 pages.
No, I agree.
Like,
I agree. Anyone that knows me knows that I have a sort of, there's a bit of anger towards Stephen King.
okay.
I have not that he cares or should he care, but because he is a good writer and he's a good storyteller. He's just like so long-winded for me. I mean, I know some people
I
really
haven't
love.
read a lot of those hard-boiled detectives things that he's been churning out like every couple of years. I heard they're good, but I just
I read Joyland. That was really good. But but again, it's a slimmer book. He just
it's a
he
summer
tells the
weekend beach
story.
read. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not, I know like a lot of people love that, just getting lost in the little details, and but yeah,
I
he's
mean,
kind of the writer I think of when I say
my
I
only
don't want to
beef with
read.
him is that sometimes he not only repeats certain characters or characteristics or killers or something. It's just like, dude, you've written 4 books about like haunted cars. Like, stop.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
first one was great, and it's like, don't what? You can't
yeah,
reinvent the
he's.
wheel, man.
I mean, eventually you got to. I mean, at this point for him, it's second nature. It's just he sits down and just writes. He doesn't even have to think about it. He's been doing it so long. But eventually, you run out of material, you run out of ideas, so
Oh
you
yeah,
just
there's
read.
and every writer's different, and every writer has their own style, and it's all like we were just saying, like personal preference. Like for me, um, I grew up and I saw the Jack Ryan movies, and I thought they were great. So I'm like, oh well, I'm gonna go invest in that Tom Clancy series, and I got through Hunt for Red October. Okay, it was like taunt, like thriller, like 350 pages. This is great. And then as they progressed, I was like, dude, we do not need a page and a half about like the weight of the gun.
Yeah,
Like I get like
I
the,
agree.
the military minded kind of
I
attention to detail, but fuck, it's just the
Yeah.
story just goes.
Yep. I No, I agree. I kind of blame that on the publishing world though, in the terms of like publishing houses.
Mhm.
There's such a standard now. Like, in order for you to even want to submit to an agent, it has to be a certain length. People don't, agents and publishing companies, they don't publish novellas. They don't, they're not really keen on that stuff. So it's like you have to hit a certain word count, and it's usually like a novel is considered what, like 60, between 60 and like 80,000 is like
Mhm.
the standard. People usually shoot for the longer side, but then like you get people that are like, well, I gotta pad it because it's like, oh, I have a book here that's 62,000 words, but you know
I
the
think it's just going to be however long it's going to be. I've
I agree with you, but I guess if you're trying to go, if you're trying to find an agent, like I actually submitted this last one, the new one. I actually queried agents for it for like a few months, and it was like it was a nightmare. It's like they have so like it has to be, a certain length. It has to be this. It has to be that. They want to know how many followers you have on Twitter and Instagram and
it's all the
Facebook
cult
and
of personality now. I think that they're worried about the easy return, so they would rather put as little money and time as possible to put a celebrity's face on a cookbook, which they know that will sell because people will be at Target or in line at a grocery store and see the little spindle rack right by the checkout. And people are like,
exactly.
oh, I need, there's some recipes and it's got so and so on the cover. It must be good. So
Yeah.
they'll hawk out the $20 versus the dwindling literary aisle in some of these big chain stores where it's like if you're not on that end cap, people will just walk right by.
Oh yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. It's just the way it is now. They don't want like I was, you talk to some older writers who've been in the game for a while. It's like even it's changed over the years. It used to be where, before social media, the publisher's job was to sell the books. Now the publishers and the agents want you to not only write the books but also help sell them, and it's like, eh,
It's like, I write scripts, I write poetry, I do a little bit of acting, not so much anymore. But the thing is, also being like a single parent and trying to work and trying to like eat and sleep, and it's like at a certain point, a guy that I interviewed a couple weeks ago, Brendan Constantine, had a point, and he's like, to do this full time and to be successful, like wildly successful, you almost have to have like a trust fund, and
yep.
like be able to appoint someone to be your social media advisor, someone to do your marketing, somebody to schedule your appearances, book tours, open mics, whatever. Um, I don't know too many people made of money that can just do it all.
No, yeah, of course not. There's very few people. Yeah, it's just, and a lot of it, and if you are one of those success stories, it's just luck. It has more, because of course you got to put in the hard work and write
Yeah,
the book.
you gotta finish the damn thing.
But yeah, a lot of it does have to do with luck. It's, I see so many talented people that just, don't get anywhere.
It's frustrating, and it's like, I
I
think
mean,
a
that's
lot of people, a lot of friends of mine, I've had to have conversations with where they're just like they want to throw in the towel, they want to give up, and they don't understand. And it's like, my advice is always, whatever you do as a writer, just keep writing. Maybe the only thing that you can, because the only part of the equation you can affect is you.
mhm.
So if you have your novel and it's not selling or it's not getting over, think about short stories, think about poetry, think about, I don't want to say copywriting, but there's so many other things you can do to keep yourself writing, thinking about different kinds of things, so that a conversation will come up like, we like this short story. Like, have you ever thought about writing a novel? And you're like, actually, and then you have it, and then you can just
Yeah,
email it to them and you're ready to, I mean, perfect world situation. But let me ask you this. So you're going on trips, you're going on vacations, or just walking around your town where you live in. Has change of scenery or like locations or anything like that on maybe a move or a vacation kind of inspired any kind of writing, in terms like maybe you see a dilapidated house and you think that would be a good hideout for some crooks, or like an abandoned warehouse, or just maybe like a sinkhole opens up and where the hell does it go?
yeah, I got you. Yeah, I mean, my where I live now is very much uh influences my writing in those terms. I think even with like the new one, I like things we bury, for example. I take the location really is just at an old like motel, like roadside motel, and I've always been fascinated with motels for some reason. If I could get away with it, I would set everything I wrote in a motel, like
People
just
come
like
and go and they need a place to sleep.
yeah, and like you stay at a motel and you're like, yeah, some bad shit went down here, or some weird shit went down here. Even like there's I like I said, I live in a rural area. It's kind of a poor area, so there's a lot of like dilapidated homes and old burnt out trailers, which shows up in the new one. Um, so yeah, definitely. It's just
I mean,
definitely
you
like
gotta
I'm
wonder.
always
I mean, there's just so much. It's a
seeing
big
things.
country, and there's like, you know, I find too, whenever I go on a vacation and it's like out of state or something, and I'm out of my comfort zone, I don't know the area, I don't know the street names, and I can't do it as much now, having kids or whatever. But one of my favorite things I used to like to do was just get in the car, fill up the gas tank, make sure I didn't have anywhere to be in the next couple of days or whatever, and just disappear and like end up in some small town, get in, like you were saying, a motel room, and then the next day just, lock up the hotel, lock up the car, and just walk around the town and get lost.
Hmm.
Just be anonymous, just hear conversations, just wander into weird, old timey curiosity shops and cafes. And it was just so great to just be like, I don't know any of these people. They're all living their life. It's kind of like you're watching a TV show happen in front of you. And you absorb those experiences and take them back because you never, I think it's like, when you live in a place for a long time to the point where it's like, you don't need to look at the streets
Yeah.
other than a stop sign or a street light, but you don't need to look at street names, and you don't need to look at landmarks, and you don't need to think about traffic, sort of. I mean,
Hmm.
like you can kind of gauge the time of day, but in a place where you've never been and you don't know anybody, it's amazing how like your whole like sensory apparatus just opens up, and it's just like I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. Where it's like sometimes we just totally need that as like a writer to just get completely like fish out of water, and then it's like things you never notice in your own town. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. That happened like last week. Indy and I went somewhere we didn't really know very well. It was, like an hour away from where we live now, and we were just walking the streets, and we we went down just one alleyway. There was just like graffiti all over the place, and then we keep walking, and we ended up on this one street. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if I had gotten stabbed. It was just like it was one of those kinds of places. Like, I don't know about this.
You're like,
Yeah,
you got good running shoes on, right, honey? If I say
but
run,
like you
don't
said,
say why, just fucking run.
yeah. But I mean, obviously, nothing happened. But it
Right.
looked like it could be one of those places. It was just, um, but like you said, it opens up the imagination in a writer's head. It's like, oh, like what kind of stuff could happen down here?
It's like it's stuff in your own neighborhood you never think twice because you've been past the same stupid gas station, 7-Eleven, CVS, whatever. You've been past it all, but it's like some of these small out of the way towns where it's mom and pop stuff. It's just like you don't want to assume the worst about people, but you always think like, yeah, there's just what's keeping that person in that town, and like they're in their 70s and they're still, working that barbershop slash bait and tackle. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
what secrets are they hiding? Like, what's going on in the basement of that place?
yeah.
Like, do I want to know? you know,
Barbershop bait and tackle. Is that a real thing? That should be.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm
I've
gonna,
seen a lot of like those general stores.
yeah, no, no, I know. I
Yeah, where
love
it's
that
like,
image.
well, what do we got? Like, well, we've got like rat poison, we've got powdered sugar. Like, oh, let's just set both of those down. I don't know. They look similar. Um,
I almost want to take that for my next book.
dude, use it. It's fine. So as far as influences go, I think that one of the things I got from the book, and maybe I'm reaching here, but I got a little bit of the author Michael Connolly. Have you read any of his
Uh,
stuff?
I have never actually read his stuff.
It's really good. I mean, I got a little bit of that vibe from the Finch character, and it's not a slag. I mean, he's a fucking amazing writer.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know who he is. He's obviously, especially with the crime and stuff like that. I just have not. I haven't gotten to his work yet.
I'm trying to
Like,
think. Oh God, who is the other guy I was going to mention? Oh, I think Tarantino's adapted a couple of his books. Rum Punch was one of them.
oh, Elmore
Elmore
Leonard.
Leonard, yeah.
Yep,
So
I am a fan of his work.
yeah,
Um,
so I
but
got
yeah,
a
Michael
little bit of
Connelly,
that.
I've never read.
Well,
But
he's
now
kind of
now
Elmore's
I'm
kind
gonna
of
have to.
gotten a little bit of like Southern Gothic kind of crime stuff. So
Mhm.
so
I'm
I
gonna
thought
have to
maybe
read
that
him.
was. So who else would you say were some of your influences?
My influences would be, I mean, there's so many, but Tom Piccirilli
Okay.
is probably my number one. Um, Everything I write is just basically me trying to imitate him. Um, Cormac McCarthy,
Oh yeah, yeah.
hands down, just a fantastic writer. Especially like he gets very philosophical, and I'm into that kind of stuff. So,
I'm trying to remember. I think it's The Road, the last
mhm.
paragraph of that. I remember putting it down, and it was literally like this. I just gingerly put it down, and I remember going like this, like, and then taking a breath and going like,
Yeah,
fuck.
that's like every book of his. It's just
But that one especially, I was like, I'm not gonna write anything like that. I gotta like process that, like the last whatever. I don't remember exactly what happened in the last paragraph. I just remember being like, I need a minute.
yeah. I need a month. You read something like Blood Meridian or like Child of God. It's just like it's like a brick to the head.
Like I need to go
Um,
watch a cartoon or something where people hit
yeah,
each other with animated hammers, like itchy and
yeah,
scratchy. I need to.
yeah. His stuff is really heavy. But yeah, him like Tom Piccirilli. I love Flannery O'Connor.
Mhm.
David Joy. He's a newer writer. I don't know
Okay.
if you've ever heard of
No, I
him.
haven't.
He's really good. He writes Southern crime fiction. Um, who else? There's so many.
I mean, you don't have to go down the whole list. I was just thinking,
Mhm.
like, for me, those first couple that we mentioned, I kind of feel like maybe a kind of across the board, it's like everybody, even if they haven't read everything, everybody kind of like is indirectly influenced, a little bit.
Yeah,
And
of course.
obviously, like movies and shows that you've watched, I mean, we can't help but be influenced by all that
Oh, of course. Yeah.
too. So, well, here's one that I think is pretty fun that kind of what you were talking about, and I'll just kind of like twist it to my own design, which
Mhm.
is what do you think the obsession is with in culture now with true crime and the interactive like mystery podcasts that have come around in the last like 5 years, where it's like people individually or couples or groups that sit and they listen to these podcasts where like every week they give you like clues to this thing and it's maybe a real crime, but
Yeah.
they set it up for you like see if you can out detect the detectives that actually worked on the case. I think people are just innately like they love mysteries.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't love a good mystery? I always say I love mysteries in particular that are never answered. I love a mystery where you don't get like a solid kind of ending or a solid like answer, because it's fun to just constantly like what the hell was going on there? What happened? That's just me. I know some people get a little like, well, what the hell?
They're like, I only
It was
have so many hours in the day, dude.
it was never solved. People don't I know people don't like that. I particularly like that though. But sorry, what was the question?
It was kind of a rambling question, but like why, I guess in the last like 5 years or so, has just been this sudden obsession, that
With
not just
true.
people that but people maybe you run into, and then you're like shocked that they're into like true crime podcasts or something like that. Is it because maybe the advent and the popularity of podcasts in general?
I mean that definitely has a lot to do with it. Yeah, it's kind of like a weird phenomenon.
Like if one of your
This
relatives would like Phil, dude, you got to check out this, and they're like, you listen to that too, and they're like, oh, you listen to that too, like no way.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. It's like, oh, even like celebrities. Like I found out recently that like Conan O'Brien is a big true crime fan, and it's like wouldn't think that someone like him is, but yeah, it is kind of strange. I think I think it has I mean it might have something to do with people from like, I'm not sure, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
35.
Okay, so I'm 40. So when we were growing up in like the 80s, that's when like they started making a lot more like specials dedicated to crime. It was taking a focus in terms of like television. And I think that people from our generation are now the ones in charge at like studios or
Right,
television, you
right.
know, that producing, and they grew up just being bombarded with this stuff. I remember being a kid, I was really into satanic panic, that whole hysteria in the 80s. And I remember being a kid, like, you know, like even like 11 in like the early 90s, and like going into the local library and like, I mean, I'll admit this now, but like I used to steal books from the public library, like true crime books and like stuff on satanic panic, because I would see something on like HBO. They were doing a special on like, oh, say, or like the West Memphis Three, or I'm
Right,
like,
right.
oh, I need to know more about this, you know. And I think that might have a lot to do with it as well. It's like growing up in that time, and then now these people are in charge, and they're kind of like in charge of picking what's being produced. So they're like, well, you know, you go back and you think when you were a kid, you know, you were watching and seeing all this stuff. You know, Dahmer, you know, got caught when it was like 94. Because he's like the first serial killer that I can really remember being on the front page of like the New York Post. You know,
It's
so
interesting
like
that you
I think
bring
that
that
has a
up
lot to do
though,
with it.
because I feel like even back then, before cell phones and like the internet was like so prevalent, it's like you would think that people would notice the signs, like let's just say Dahmer, that something was off with the guy or something wasn't right. But there just are those people in our lives, coworkers, you know, whatever, random people in the town that you know of them, and they're just really quiet, and they're loners, and they're introverts, and there might be nothing wrong with them. And it's like
No, yeah,
nobody wants to like go stalk the guy who just goes to the library, picks up his groceries, walks home, and watches his TV show and goes to bed. Because there's
yeah.
99% of the time there's nothing wrong, but it's kind of like now it's like even worse because you're like, we do have cell phones, we have the internet and cameras on our phones, and we take pictures of everything, which is why crime should be going down. But it's like, I guess more digital crime is happening now than everything, fraud and all that stuff. But it's like
Yeah.
it kind of makes you wonder. It's like serial killers still happen. These things still mysteries, murder mysteries.
Oh yeah.
Whole
There's
families getting poisoned. People in boardrooms getting gassed, or they drink poison in the pitcher of water, and like 11 people in a boardroom in Dubai or something, and people were like, "How?" But it's 2022. Like how?
yeah, yeah. You would think, yeah, especially with like the way like too like the way forensics has like
Oh yeah.
gotten so good. It's like you think like you can't almost get away with anything anymore, but it still happens.
I'm trying
Um
to think of what's that movie with Seth Rogen and Bill Hader where they play the cops. Super bad, where they're saying like, yeah, I was really into being a cop. I just thought, like CSI, I'd come into a room with the black light and there'd just be semen on everything. It's like, yeah, I would kill to go into a crime scene. There's just semen on everything, but it's just not the case, kid. It's just like, but I think that's that's the issue too with books and with TV and film, is we're kind of fed this idea of what it's like, and then like the actual true crime thing over time, like we were talking about it just seeping into the culture, and like my daughter and I love to watch Only Murders in the Building.
mhm.
Have you seen that yet?
I have not, no.
It's really funny, but it's totally playing on that true crime podcast of like everybody's a suspect and everyone's taking notes and everybody's taking pictures with their cell phone and everybody's got a podcast. But it's
I
true.
know it's yeah, it's out of control. I mean, I love true crime, so I don't mind it, but yeah, it's sometimes every time you turn around, someone's got a true crime podcast or
I don't have a
I'll
problem
sit.
with it. It's just like, to me anyway, it just seemed like sometime in the last 5 years, and definitely during the heart of the pandemic, it was just like well, people can't make content, so they're just gonna make content.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true.
um, okay, so I can tell you're into the noir and the true crime. Are there any other genres you haven't kind of tackled yet that you think like, okay, well, I've done this a lot. Why don't I try something else or something else
I
you've always wanted to try?
I want to write I so badly want to write a Western. I love Western. I love the genre, mostly the film. I don't I've read some Westerns or even neo-Westerns, but yeah, I want to write a Western like really bad.
The thing I've tried and the thing that I run into, it's not the dialogue. Well, the dialogue's tricky because people in Westerns speak so little. And
Mhm.
every line that they're saying to somebody, even at the general store, the guy's got like a little piece of paper and he's like, he just hands to the clerk.
Yeah.
They don't, not like today where we have stop and have a 5 minute conversation and ask if the cashier's daughter made the cheerleading squad or whatever. There's none of that. It's just direct. But
Yeah.
one of the issues I had, I kind of started and stopped something is with television and film and with a book, you can describe landscape. It's not the same as having an actor just stand there like this big and then the rest is just a mountain range and like endless plain and like a river.
Yeah.
It's so hard to write that and make it being like you want to explain it to somebody, but it's like if you do that you kill it. So it's kind of like, how do you do that and make it as rapturous as if you really were in like Wyoming or Montana or the Dakotas and you just have this, and
Yeah.
you don't need to say anything as a character. The character, like I said, it could just be standing there like in awe of these wide open spaces. So it's tough, man, because you've got the landscape is definitely a character, and then you've got the actual human characters that don't talk that much.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite westerns, and no surprise because it's like one of everybody's favorites, is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I don't think that screenplay is even 85 pages long for a 2 hour movie because there's not a lot of talking. It's just when they're together and shit goes haywire and they bicker, there's
Mhm.
back and forth. Like, think you used enough dynamite there, Butch?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that just speaks volumes about their friendship. So
Yeah. My
tell me a little bit about like what you think. I mean, those are my personal obstacles I see. What about you with that genre?
um my biggest problem with not wanting to write it, but the reason I have it is, and this is gonna sound really ridiculous. It's like fucking research. I'm just lazy. Like I hate research. And if I was to do a Western, I definitely want to do it right. And I would want to do it time appropriate. And there is a lot I do know, but when you actually start getting down and getting in there and writing stuff, there's so much you realize you don't know about just the little details about just even about what a character is wearing or I just like sometimes I love reading, but I don't like reading when it feels like I'm being forced to.
Or that it's
In that
work.
way, I'm like
Yeah, no one
forcing
wants to
myself
just
to
be
like
like,
have to know all these little things. I'm like, I don't know if I want to. So I
no one
mean,
wants to just sit
eventually,
and read a textbook if they're not into it, basically.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think eventually I will. But going back to what you had just said about description, uh, someone that I did when you were asking me about favorite writers, someone I didn't mention that I should have is James Lee Burke.
okay.
His writing is so cinematic, it's unbelievable. He's just no one does it like him. He's one of the best. And most of his books do take place in like Texas or Montana, or a lot of them take place in Louisiana. But he had his descriptions. It is like watching a movie. It's unreal. So if you're ever looking for something like that, or even
Okay.
just like even just a reference point, like someone to read someone that does something very, very cinematic, he's definitely a writer you should read.
Definitely. I think also for westerns, as books and to develop as TV shows and movies, the thing that we run into is as two white guys sitting here, we can't avoid the past, which is there's no way I think in 2022 that you could set a western, um, depending on the time period. There's no way I think you can have Native American or Indigenous Americans in the story and cast them as villains at all anymore. There's just no way that book would ever get published or that made into a show or a movie, because we've just turned that corner where it's just like, okay, white people sucked. We did kind of push westward, and we did kind of um such a fucking red tape issue, but it's like we did exterminate and we did lie about treaties and give out blankets with smallpox. That shit happened. We can't deny
Yeah,
any of that. We did say like, oh, we won't touch the Black Hills, and that's where Mount Rushmore is. So yeah, that's
it's
I think that's why a lot of the westerns shows and movies that are getting made, either they do it brilliantly and they subvert it, or they just don't deal with it at all. And like one of the better ones I think is Yellowstone, the TV show, which is like they have the ranch butt up against the reservation land, which is also a casino, and it's like everything's a corporation now. So it's like everybody's
yeah.
interest is the land, but it's also at the end of the day about money too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree. It's a very it's a it's an issue that you gotta like, especially like even just talking about it, you want to tiptoe. You don't want to get, but I agree with you. It is hard to do. My problem with you bring up Yellowstone, and Taylor Sheridan is hands down one of my favorite writers currently.
I just watched Sicario again last night.
Yeah, he's just so fucking fantastic.
How does
Everything
he
he's
churn it out? He's got like multiple shows
I know
going. And I'm
it's
like, even
insane.
with Insomnia, it's like, what?
I know.
And no one
I
just
don't.
churns it out. And I don't think he just had this stuff like backlog because he's an actor too. So it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
impressed.
Oh yeah, I've been a fan for a while, and Yellowstone is great. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Is the mayor
1883.
what's the
Did you
one, the prison one?
Mayor of Kingstown?
I haven't gotten into that one. I think I watched like the
Oh,
pilot. Is it good?
I love. Yeah, I loved it.
I watched 1883, and he's got like four other fucking shows. All of his
Yeah,
movies have been pretty amazing. I've seen all the
yeah.
movies, I think.
It sucks because like with 1883, I think, like I said, I love Taylor Sheridan. I think 1883, I enjoyed it. Towards the end, there were some issues I had.
Well, it kind of ran out of steam about halfway through.
It did run out a steam a little bit, but also one of my issues was it almost felt like up until 1883, I never viewed his work as like trying to fit the mold of anything that was like politically correct, or he just told his stories. But with 1883, I almost felt like he was trying to apply today's standards to the time period that the show takes place in. So it kind of threw me off a little bit. I was like, well, that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't have happened in
Well, yeah,
1883.
and
And I,
then the middle of the show got a little preachy with the lead female character. It was like
yeah,
dear diary for the whole thing. Because I got to tell you, I feel like, and I unless I ask him, maybe it's on IMDb in the trivia or something. I feel like it was probably initially written or pitched as a 2 hour movie or 2 hours plus, because for my money, it's like that first hour, that pilot was fucking gangbusters, just amazing. And
yeah, it
Billy
was.
Bob Thornton being like the gunslinging sheriff. And I was like, what happened to this guy? And then, it was just real visceral. And it was like how horrible and that life was. And those settlers from Europe were just totally outmatched by the land and everything. And then the last episode to kind of wrap it up was great. And I kind of feel like maybe I'm trying to think which, I don't remember the titles. I don't know if the episodes had titles, but the river crossing where a lot of them drowned and they couldn't swim and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that like you take that, what I would say is almost like that perfect first hour of the pilot. You cherry pick a little bit around that horrendous kind of river crossing and getting through the mountains and things like that, and then you get to that last like hour, the last 45 minutes or whatever. Perfect movie. Not
Yeah.
perfect, but I mean streamlined at least,
Well, as perfect as it can be. Yeah, I can see that actually.
because everything
I
else
never
about it, I was just like,
I never thought of
you're
that,
gonna
but
talk about sitting around and how bad the weather is. This is a fucking Western, right? Like this, and I know there was a lot of controversy with Sam Elliott talking about the conditions, but it's like, I think if they would have been moving constantly and riding the horses and the wagons, they would have been, the actors would have been warmer or whatever. And I just, there was that whole middle, and I don't think Taylor, I think he only directed the first one. I don't think he directed anything else. So
mhm.
that's why that first episode was just, and then when I was watching it, I was riveted, like, this is amazing. And then
Yeah.
after, and then it kind of was like the second episode was good, and then like the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then finally I was like, let's just wrap it up, man, because it's like no
Yeah,
wonder
there
it's
was a
not a
little
series; it's a mini series, you know.
there was a bit, yeah, there was a bit there in towards the end, like you're saying, that kind of was like, there was that whole thing with the romance too between the
How
leading
many?
girl and
I was sitting there watching that, and I was just like, this is a series or a mini series? Because this girl is, do not touch her, you will die.
yeah, yeah, right.
She was just a walking like death trap. Like, I want to love. I'm like, yeah, girl, we're good.
Yeah.
We don't, whatever your yikes. You're
Yeah,
you're the devil.
but yeah, definitely like you were saying, the way that like black people or Native Americans were treated, it is hard. You'd be hard pressed to do it. I mean, it's still done, but I mean, if it's, you just got to stay true to the story. Unfortunately, we live in a time where a lot of people don't, they may not want stories like that, or
I mean, but you know what? Speaking of Taylor, though, and there is a through line through not everything he's put out, but a lot of the movies and shows he of white Western writers that I can think of is really good about giving Indigenous Americans their due. The characters are always fleshed out. They're handled with respect. Like, have you seen
oh yeah,
Wind
absolutely.
River? Wind
Wind
River.
River is his masterpiece, I think.
That's fucking just wow.
And you know what's funny? I was talking with some, like, with India and with a friend of ours, and it was like, ever since Wind River came out, now, like, all this stuff I see about like Native American women being like gone missing, like all this stuff keeps coming out with true crime stuff about like what happens to Native American women and how many go missing and
Oh
how
yeah,
many
yeah. He
are.
definitely shined a light on that.
Yeah, that I mean, I felt the same way too, because I was like, I had never seen anything as that much until Wind River, and now it's like all of a sudden all this stuff keeps coming out about.
That's what sucks, and what's scary about that area of the country is with the, we're talking about the wide open spaces and being far away from everything and everything being so spread out is shit's been happening for decades, and it's just
Oh
because
yeah,
we in
it's
our
sad.
comfy little towns with
I
all the
know.
creature comforts that we can walk across the street to a Starbucks and get our haircut next to it at the baby tackle store. um, yeah, I mean, people, I mean, I complain about stuff in life. You do too. People in this world have it so much fucking worse off, man.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. But I mean, yeah, you can't, I mean, sometimes you could sit there and think about how much better you may have it than other people, and then other times it's like you got to get back to your life, and there are things that are a fucking pain in the ass.
Well, it's also a cultural difference too. I remember years ago I read this interview with Bono from U2, and he said that a major difference when he came to America for the first time in how Americans versus Irish people see wealth. And he says American kids may be kicking a ball on a street or in an alley, and one kid, might look up the hill and see the big house on the hill, and he goes, you know what? If I work really hard, one day I'm gonna have that. He said that's the American ideal. He's like, the Irish ideal is same group of kids kicking the ball around, and one kid looks up at the house on the hill and he goes, one day I'm gonna get that fucker.
I like that actually.
Just like Jesus, but you know what? I mean, knowing what that guy probably lived through in the early '70s, I don't blame him. All that stuff and with the troubles and all that with the IRA, it's like, good God. I
Yeah.
have no like frame of reference for how
Yeah.
horrible that had to be, where it's like you don't want to walk down the streets for fear of like the bakery's gonna blow up or something.
Yeah.
But well, it's been about an hour, but let me say, let me just ask you this: like, what is next? I mean, are you gonna do any appearances or open mics or bookstore stuff with this book, or?
Probably not. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It's just about getting the opportunity, and
Mhm.
I get like kind of like, especially with like the open mics, like readings and stuff. I get very nervous about that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, it's so different too. I'm hopefully going to put out a book of short stories here sometime this year or next year, and I
Really?
think like, well, the average story is about 10 to 12 pages, and I think I don't want to stand up in front of people and just what's the Man on the Moon, where Andy Kaufman reads The Great Gatsby from start to
Yeah.
finish. Like, I just have that in my mind of like me being in the audience and like going like, oh fuck this clown, I can't
Yeah.
just, that's a long time to sit. And so poetry open mics or stand-up comedy is so much easier to sit because the bits are so much shorter.
Shorter.
But
Yeah.
with a novel, it's like, what would you do? Would you just cherry pick certain passages or do a Q&A or?
I mean, yeah, usually that's what they would do. I mean, for anyone that does like a novelist or whatever that reads from their work, probably just pick, yeah, I don't know, like pick a chapter that might be the best one to grab a hold of an audience that's never read it. And
Yeah, I mean, whatever
um,
you're gonna do to pull them in. I mean, hopefully who's ever interviewing is asking somewhat
yeah,
interesting questions of other than like, so do you type like this or like this?
yeah, right. The pecking. I'm a pecker.
Yeah, me too.
That's sounds funny.
I used to be, all hands on deck, so to speak, but now I think it's because the older we get, sometimes we kind of self-edit a little bit. So we're going along and
Yeah,
like, fuck that word. No, 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 no. I need backspace. That we're using laptops and stuff, but all right, man. I can't believe it's been almost an hour, but let
I
me
know.
give you this time to kind of like, plug your website, any social media, YouTube stuff. How can people find your work online?
Uh, philiplopresti.com is the site for mainly my photography. I'm working on like an author section for that site, but right now it's just mainly for my photography. So you can find my work, my photography there. And I'm on Instagram is usually. I don't have Facebook anymore. I left Facebook this like past summer.
It's a black hole. We all need to leave it at some point.
Yeah, I haven't been back, but I am on Instagram, and it's just Philip_LoPresti is
Do
my
you have
name.
anything
And
on YouTube where you're reading anything, even if it's poetry or?
no, I don't. I don't. Um, but maybe I should.
I mean, do whatever you're gonna do. I'm hoping you do more stuff like this, so it gets the word out there. People get to know you, see your face, know a little bit about your process, and all that, all the fucking cliches. Like, so tell me about your process, and do
Yeah.
you like, do you mentally murder yourself while you're walking around the room wearing your favorite blood red scarf? No, no. Truman Capote or whatever, but
Yeah. Oh, in cold blood is one of my favorite true crime books.
it is the classic.
My process is a lot of just hating myself and beating my head against the wall.
You're like, fuck this, fuck
Yep.
you, fuck it all, fuck
You
this character, fuck this book, fuck the coffee doesn't make itself.
I can't fucking do this. Every time I start something like a new project, I'm like, how the fuck am I going to do this? And then I
Dude,
get to the end and I'm like, how the
everybody's
fuck did
always
I do
got that,
that?
like, like I said, the lightning bolt thing, and then you either grab the notebook, or you're lucky enough to be in front of your laptop and look, and you want to get that first, like, great first line down, and then it's like a lot of yeah, uh,
Yep. That's
save, and then you're like, was I supposed to be somewhere in an hour?
that
Fuck,
that fucking
what?
sounds about right.
And then it's like months of like trying to reclaim that feeling and making it stretch out over however long it takes to get it
Oh
done.
yeah. So you know exactly what it's like. That
I've
sounds
written
about
long
right.
form stuff, man, and the worst is if you get a long, like, week, 2 week interruption where something happens in your life. We've got kids, we're chasing them around and stuff on weekends and whatnot. But then it's like, I call it the dead fish, where it's like, oh, I should really get back to that thing I started. And you pick it up and you're like, oh, where was I going with this? And
Yeah.
oh, I don't remember why this other character came in and where they're supposed to go. And then you're like, you kind of start plotting until you pick up the momentum again.
Again, yeah. I mean, all my projects, all my books start off as they're fucking puzzles. I have pieces. I just
As long as you kind of know what the ending is,
Mhm.
getting there is great, because the worst is to have a great beginning and then you're like, it just floats up into the ether, because you're like, I don't know. Well, if I don't know who the fucking killer is, how do these other characters know?
I know it. Yeah, it's people who don't realize how much work goes into it. Like I always say, the idea is the idea is the best part. Finishing it is the best feeling. Everything else in between is a fucking nightmare.
Well, and no, it's like people that are, musicians or any other, or painters, any kind of art form. People like this. They like, it's a thing, it's tangible, they can hold it in their
Yeah,
hands, so they can say, I mean, and it's true, it is an honest thing to say congratulations when somebody finishes a book, but it's a thing they can wrap their mind around, they can hold it. It's the same thing with, like, picking up, I'm going to date myself here, a CD, or a DVD or something. It's like they can go to a store and pick it up, it's a real thing. To
yeah,
talk about something in the middle of the process, they're like, oh, but in the back of their mind, they're going, because
yeah.
they
Pretty much,
don't get that it's like you have to live with it.
you do, and that's one of the hardest parts of writing is living with it for so long, because you know that like you just want it out of you.
And nobody, I mean, I don't want to phrase this the wrong way. Nobody cares, or they shouldn't care about whatever you're working on as much as you do, because you're literally the only one sitting down with that coffee, or fuck, if it's 3 in the morning, whiskey, whatever, and you're sitting there
Yeah,
and you're just doing this, and you're like, why, what, why, what, fuck. And then, there's other people who are like, go to bed.
yeah,
Or people, that down the street that see your light on and they're like, what the fuck is he doing
yeah.
in the morning on a
3 in the
Tuesday?
morning.
Yeah. But I'm going to wrap it up on that high point and just say, man,
Okay,
thank you so much for being on the show. And I will get this online here hopefully tomorrow for you. And it's great talking to you, man.
awesome. Same here. Thank you for having me.
No
I
problem. You
enjoyed
have
it.
the best of luck with the book, man. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.